This dressage horse bit and pinned its owner against a stall wall. This aggressive stallion knocked its owner off his feet during training, and this ranch horse launched a devastating charge that nearly killed its owner. These are the shocking stories of horses that attacked their owners. Stallion attacks during training. The cameras were rolling at Mike Hughes's Auburn, California ranch when 7 years of abuse and trauma erupted into pure equine fury. Titan, a 7-year-old chestnut stallion, had endured harsh training methods and inadequate care from a neglectful breeder, leaving him with deep-seated mistrust that would soon explode into violence. The striking horse had been kept in isolation, malnourished, and subjected to aggressive handling, creating a defensive and unpredictable animal that viewed humans as threats rather than companions. Mike, an experienced horseman, and his wife Laura, a veterinarian, had purchased Titan from a rescue organization after hearing his heartbreaking story. They hoped to rehabilitate him for trail riding, believing that patience and gentle handling could overcome his traumatic past. However, Titan's fear manifested as aggression during handling attempts, with Laura noting in her journal that the horse would tense up and swing his hindquarters threateningly whenever approached with a halter. During his first days at the Hughes' ranch, Titan showed alarming signs of psychological damage. He paced frantically in his paddock, pinned his ears at sudden movements, and refused to accept treats from human hands. Mike, determined to build trust, began groundwork sessions focusing on gentle approaches and desensitization techniques. The couple had installed cameras around the property to monitor their rescue horses, which inadvertently captured the terrifying encounter that would test their rehabilitation methods. On the day of the incident, Mike decided to introduce Titan to the paddock for a short liberty session, hoping to observe his behavior in a less confined space. Laura watched from the fence, ready to assist if needed, as Mike entered with a lead rope, intending to practice basic yielding exercises. As Mike approached with calm vocal cues, Titan's demeanor shifted abruptly, with footage showing his ears pinning back and eyes widening in panic before he charged forward, head lowered, striking Mike with his chest and knocking him back several feet. As Mike regained his balance, Titan reared, flailing his front hooves in a series of aggressive strikes. One hoof grazed Mike's shoulder, causing a bruise but no serious injury. Laura shouted to distract the horse, and Mike retreated to the fence, narrowly avoiding further strikes. The footage captures Titan's tense posture as he continued to snort and circle the paddock, clearly agitated and defensive. Despite the frightening attack, the Hughes family remained committed to helping Titan overcome his trauma through professional intervention and structured rehabilitation. If you thought that Stallion's rage was explosive, this next case shows how confined spaces can trigger even deadlier equine attacks. Horse bites, owner in stall. An elegant competition horse's dark secrets exploded into violence during what should have been routine grooming at Emily Carter's Lexington, Kentucky stable. Orion, a 10-year-old Hanoverian gelding recently imported from Germany, harbored dangerous behavioral issues from high-pressure training environments that his sellers had deliberately concealed from potential buyers. The horse's impressive competition record and elegant movement had masked a volatile temperament shaped by inconsistent training and the stress of international competition circuits. Emily, a semi-professional dressage rider, had acquired Orion through an international broker in February 2023, drawn to his potential for advancing her competitive goals. However, early warning signs emerged immediately upon his arrival at her family's small equestrian facility. Orion was skittish during handling, often snapping his teeth or pinning his ears when approached with tack, behaviors that Emily initially attributed to the stress of transatlantic travel and adjustment to a new environment. The horse's previous life in high-pressure training environments had created a pattern of defensive aggression, particularly in confined spaces like stalls. Emily spent weeks attempting to build trust through light groundwork and hand feeding, hoping to establish a positive relationship with her new mount. She was accustomed to working with sensitive horses and believed that patience and consistency would eventually overcome Orion's resistance to handling. The stable's security camera captured every terrifying second as Emily entered Orion's stall with a grooming kit, speaking softly, despite noticing his unusual tension from nearby tractor noise. The footage shows Orion standing rigidly as Emily approached, his body language betraying the internal tension that would soon explode into violence. As she reached to brush his shoulder, Orion swung his head sharply, biting her forearm with enough force to break skin. Emily recoiled, dropping the brush, which startled the horse further and triggered his next aggressive move. Orion then spun and charged, pinning Emily against the stall wall with his chest, while she struggled to push him back as he snapped again, narrowly missing her shoulder. Emily managed to slip under the stall guard and escape, sustaining bruises and a bite wound requiring medical medical attention. The incident highlighted the challenges of transitioning international sport horses to new owners without proper behavioral assessments. While that dressage horse was vicious in confined quarters, this next incident reveals how wild instincts can turn feeding time into warfare. Mustang kicks during feeding. Wild instincts turn deadly during feeding time when Pharaoh, a 5-year-old Mustang mare adopted from a Bureau of Land Management roundup, unleashed her feral survival mentality on her unsuspecting owner in rural Nevada. Joseph Ramirez, a ranch hand with limited horse training experience, had adopted Pharaoh through a wild horse program in March 2025, hoping she would become a reliable working horse on his small property. However, the mare's early life in the wild had instilled a survival mentality where food was scarce and fiercely protected from competitors. Pharaoh's feral background left her with a strong instinct for resource guarding, viewing any approach during feeding time as a potential threat to her survival. Upon arrival at Joseph's property, she showed initial wariness but seemed to settle into her corral environment. Joseph began basic handling, including haltering and leading, but quickly noticed Pharaoh becoming possessive over her hay and grain supplies. She would lunge or pin her ears when he approached her feeder, behaviors he initially dismissed as normal adjustment issues. The incidents escalated over several weeks, with Pharaoh's territorial behavior becoming increasingly aggressive during mealtimes. Joseph documented these encounters on his phone to seek professional advice, unknowingly creating a record of escalating dangerous behavior. The mare's wild heritage had programmed her to view humans as competitors for resources rather than providers, making feeding time a potential battleground. On the evening of the most severe attack, Joseph entered the corral to distribute evening feed, carrying a bucket of grain, while Pharaoh watched suspiciously from across the enclosure. The video clips show Pharaoh charging as Joseph set down the bucket, barreling toward him with ears flattened and biting at his arm and shoulder in quick succession. Joseph stumbled backward, dropping the bucket, which prompted Pharaoh to kick out with her hind legs, striking his thigh and causing a deep bruise. In another clip from the same session, she reared slightly, using her body to dominate the space and prevent him from retrieving the feed. Joseph escaped by climbing the corral fence, but not before sustaining bites that required stitches. The footage highlights Pharaoh's rapid escalation from warning signals to full aggression, typical of food-guarding behavior in unsocialized Mustangs whose survival instincts remained razor-sharp. That Mustang's food aggression was brutal, but this next case involves a ranch horse whose territorial fury erupted in tight spaces. Horse charges in barn. Spatial dominance turned explosive when Rusty, a 12-year-old quarter-horse gelding, launched a devastating charge in the confined barn aisle of Sasha Ellis's rural Texas ranch. The attack, captured on Sasha's smartphone as she attempted to document his training techniques, showcased how quickly routine handling can become a fight for survival when environmental factors trigger aggressive responses. Sasha, a seasoned rancher managing a modest cattle operation, had owned Rusty for several years, valuing his strength and reliability for herding tasks across the vast Texas landscape. Recent barn renovations had created tighter spaces, exacerbating Rusty's growing discomfort with close quarters handling and triggering claustrophobic responses. Warning signs of spatial anxiety had appeared gradually over several months, with Rusty beginning to crowd Sasha against walls during leading sessions and snorting warnings when tied in narrow areas. The horse's age and past experiences with rough handlers before Sasha acquired him contributed to his increasing resistance to confined spaces. Sasha, recognizing the dangerous pattern developing, began recording sessions to self-assess her techniques and identify potential triggers for Rusty's behavior. She attributed the escalating issues to the horse's advancing age and previous trauma, hoping that documentation would help him modify his approach. The rancher's experience with working horses had not prepared her for the psychological complexities of spatial anxiety in confined environments. On the day of the incident, Sasha was leading Rusty through a narrow barn aisle to a wash rack for grooming, with the space confined by stacked hay bales that limited escape routes for both horse and handler. The echoing sounds of other horses in adjacent stalls heightened the environmental stress, creating a powder keg of tension. The footage captures Sasha gently urging Rusty forward with a lead rope when suddenly, the horse's ears flatten and he lunges ahead, charging directly at Sasha with his chest and head lowered. The impact pushes Sasha backward into a wall, where Rusty continues to press forward, snapping his teeth and attempting to strike with a front hoof. Sasha drops the phone momentarily, but recovers it, yelling commands to back the horse off while struggling to maintain control. The clip ends with Sasha sidestepping to safety as Rusty wheels around, kicking at the air in continued agitation. The attack resulted in Sasha suffering a sprained wrist and minor abrasions, emphasizing the dangers of confined spaces with horses exhibiting dominance issues. The barn charge was terrifying, but this next incident shows how physical frailty can make routine horse care absolutely deadly. Mare attacks elderly owner. Physical frailty met Arabian fire in a tragic mismatch that exploded into violence when 70-year-old Morgan Hensley faced his 8-year-old Arabian mare Zara during routine feeding at her rural Virginia property. The attack, captured on a motion-activated stable camera, demonstrated the deadly consequences of mismatched horse owner dynamics when physical limitations prevent proper boundary establishment. Morgan, a lifelong horse enthusiast, had purchased Zara 2 years prior from a local breeder, drawn to her spirited temperament and elegant conformation, despite his own declining physical capabilities. Zara, bred for endurance riding, possessed the typical Arabian traits of intelligence, sensitivity, and assertiveness that required experienced handling to channel properly. The mare had a troubling history of inconsistent handling, having passed through several owners who struggled with her energy and dominant personality. Morgan's physical limitations from arthritis and a recent diagnosis of COPD reduced his strength and reaction time, making him vulnerable to the mare's increasingly aggressive behavior during daily care routines. In the months leading up to the incident, Morgan had noticed Zara becoming increasingly dominant during feeding times, displaying classic signs of resource guarding and territorial behavior. The mare would pin her ears, swing her hindquarters, or snap when Morgan approached with grain, behaviors that escalated due to Morgan's inability to provide consistent correction. Morgan's belief in gentle handling methods, combined with her physical constraints, led her to often retreat when faced with aggression, inadvertently reinforcing Zara's dangerous behavior patterns. The motion-activated camera system had been installed to monitor Zara's nighttime behavior, hoping to understand her agitation patterns and develop better management strategies. On July 25, 2025, Morgan entered the stall to deliver evening grain, unaware that Zara was already agitated from a recent feed change that had caused mild digestive discomfort. The footage captures a harrowing sequence as Morgan enters with a bucket, and Zara immediately turns her hindquarters with ears pinned back in clear warning. Morgan speaks softly to calm her and sets the bucket down, but Zara lunges forward, biting Morgan's upper arm with force, leaving a deep bruise and laceration. As Morgan stumbles backward, Zara barges forward, shoving him against the stall wall with her shoulder before delivering a swift kick with her hind leg, striking Morgan's hip and causing him to collapse in pain. The footage shows Zara continuing to circle aggressively, tossing her head and kicking at the stall door as Morgan crawls to safety, barely escaping through the half-open gate with a fractured hip that required hospitalization. An elderly woman's injuries were severe, but this next case involves years of Olympic pressure finally exploding into violent strikes. Horse rears and strikes. World-class competition training created a ticking time bomb that exploded during rehabilitation when Olympic dressage rider Antonia Ramel's retired champion Apollo unleashed years of suppressed aggression at her Swedish facility. The incident, captured on the facility's arena cameras during a training session in October 2022, showcased how high-pressure competitive environments can create psychological damage that manifests as dangerous behavior long after retirement. Apollo, a 9-year-old warm-blood gelding, had enjoyed a successful career in European dressage shows before retiring due to minor lameness issues that ended his competitive prospects. Antonia, an accomplished dressage rider, had acquired Apollo in 2020 after his retirement, intending to transition him into a lighter role as a school horse for advanced students at her family's equestrian facility near Stockholm. However, the horse's competitive background had created deep-seated behavioral issues that began surfacing during basic groundwork exercises. Apollo displayed increasing resistance when asked to move laterally or back up, behaviors that manifested as head-tossing, ear-pinning, and crowding of handlers who attempted to work with him. The horse's sensitivity and high-strung temperament, while valuable in competitive settings, had been managed through intense training regimens that suppressed natural behaviors. His retirement to a more relaxed environment paradoxically triggered defensive responses as he struggled to adapt to different expectations and handling methods. Apollo's previous trainers had likely used pressure-based techniques that created compliance through intimidation rather than understanding, leaving him with unresolved behavioral issues. In the weeks leading up to the incident, Antonia Antonia had enlisted the help of local equine behaviorist Dr. Lars Eriksson to address Apollo's increasing pushiness and resistance to basic commands. The facility's outdoor arena was equipped with cameras to record training sessions for analysis, which proved critical in capturing the explosive confrontation on October 28, 2022. The session followed a particularly stressful week for Apollo, as construction noise near the facility had disrupted his routine and heightened his anxiety levels. The video shows Apollo initially responding to light cues from a lunge whip under Dr. Eriksson's guidance, moving in controlled circles. When Antonia steps in to ask Apollo to yield his hindquarters, his demeanor shifts dramatically, with ears flattening and body tensing. Suddenly, Apollo rears, towering over Antonia and striking out with his front hooves, with one hoof narrowly missing her shoulder as she steps back. Apollo then lunges forward, snapping his teeth in an attempt to bite, while Dr. Eriksson intervenes with the whip to redirect the horse's attention. Those striking hooves were dangerous, but this next incident proves even small ponies can unleash devastating boxing out attacks. Pony attacks during farrier visit. First-time ownership met Irish fire when 6-year-old Connemara mare Fiona unleashed her boxing out behavior on inexperienced owner Sophie Grant during a farrier visit in rural Ireland. The attack, captured on a trainer's body camera during what should have been routine hoof care, showcased the explosive potential of improperly socialized ponies when faced with unfamiliar procedures. Sophie, a hobby rider and first-time horse owner, had purchased Fiona from a Connemara pony breeder in County Galway in January 2025, attracted by her athletic build and potential for jumping and eventing competitions. Fiona's background revealed significant gaps in her early training and socialization, having spent much of her early life in a herd environment where she established a dominant position among other young horses. The mare had been lightly backed, but lacked extensive ground manners training, particularly in handling procedures that required restraint and cooperation with unfamiliar people. Her pony heritage included the typical Connemara traits of intelligence and spirit, but also the breed's renowned feistiness when not properly managed. Upon arriving at Sophie's modest livery yard, Fiona immediately displayed concerning behavioral patterns that suggested inadequate preparation for domestic life. She showed subtle signs of unease during basic handling procedures, including flinching at touches to her legs, pinning her ears when her feet were lifted, and shifting weight uncomfortably during grooming sessions. Sophie, eager to bond with her new horse and lacking experience with problem behaviors, initially attributed these reactions to adjustment stress from the recent ownership change. In preparation for the farrier visit, Sophie had been working on basic desensitization exercises, including touching Fiona's legs with a soft brush and practicing lifting her feet for brief periods. However, the mare remained consistently resistant to these procedures, displaying warning signs that Sophie's inexperience prevented her from recognizing as serious behavioral issues. On February 12, 2025, farrier Patrick Doyle arrived to trim Fiona's hooves, with experienced trainer Liam O'Sullivan wearing a body camera to document the training progress for Sophie's educational records. The session took place in a well-lit stable aisle, with Fiona appearing calm initially as she munched hay in her stall. However, the unfamiliar tools and scents from the farrier's kit subtly increased her tension levels, creating an undercurrent of anxiety that would soon explode into violence. The footage captures the escalation as Patrick lifts Fiona's front left hoof to begin trimming, while Liam holds her head steady. When Patrick applies slight pressure with the rasp, Fiona suddenly rears up on her hind legs, boxing out with her front hooves in rapid, striking motions that nearly connect with Liam's chest as he dodges sideways. That pony's boxing was intense, but this next case shows how territorial rage can trigger bone-crushing, double-barreled kicks. Horse kicks trainer. Dominance and territorial instincts exploded into pure violence when 11-year-old paint horse gelding Bandit launched a devastating assault on rancher Tom Whitaker and trainer Jessica Holt during a groundwork session in the rugged Montana landscape. The incident, captured on a GoPro camera positioned in the training arena, occurred while attempting to correct Bandit's increasingly pushy behavior during lunging exercises that had become progressively more dangerous over time. Tom, a third-generation cattle rancher, had owned Bandit for 5 years, utilizing his strength and stamina for herding cattle across the vast ranch terrain. Bandit's problematic behavior had developed gradually, beginning with subtle signs of disrespect that escalated into dangerous confrontations during handling. Originally purchased from a local auction, the horse had a spotty training history, with previous owners describing him as stubborn and prone to testing boundaries with handlers. At Tom's ranch, Bandit initially performed well in his working role, but gradually developed concerning habits, including crowding handlers, resisting haltering, and kicking out when corrected during routine procedures. procedures. Tom's experience with working horses was extensive, but his formal training knowledge was limited, leading him to manage Bandit's behavioral issues by avoiding direct confrontations rather than addressing the underlying dominance problems. This approach inadvertently allowed Bandit to assert increasingly aggressive control over interactions, setting the stage for more serious conflicts. By spring 2024, the horse's behavior had worsened significantly, particularly during groundwork sessions where he would bolt or kick when asked to move forward on a lunge line. Recognizing the escalating danger, Tom hired trainer Jessica Holt, a specialist in problem horses who had extensive experience with dominant and aggressive animals. Jessica immediately recommended recording training sessions to identify specific behavioral triggers and document progress in addressing Bandit's issues. On June 10, 2024, the incident occurred during a session in a 60-foot round pen at Tom's ranch, with the area equipped with a GoPro camera on a tripod to capture the interaction. The timing of the session proved particularly volatile, as Bandit had been restless that morning due to a recent herd change that introduced a new stallion to nearby pastures, heightening his territorial instincts and competitive behavior. The footage captures the escalating tension as Jessica begins asking Bandit to move forward on a lunge line, using a whip for directional cues. Initially compliant, Bandit grows increasingly resistant, pinning his ears and tossing his head in warning signs that the handlers failed to heed adequately. When Tom steps in to reinforce the command, Bandit suddenly charges forward with head lowered, aiming directly at Tom's chest and knocking him back several steps before spinning to deliver a powerful double-barreled kick. A powerful kick was devastating, but this next incident involves racing trauma that created relentless charging behavior. Horse charges repeatedly. Racing trauma erupted into repeated charges when 10-year-old thoroughbred gelding Storm unleashed his pent-up reactivity on amateur rider Claire Donovan during groundwork in Southern California. The incident, captured on a tripod-mounted camera for training analysis, highlighted the complex challenges of managing horses with high-strung temperaments and unresolved behavioral issues stemming from their racing careers. Claire, passionate about retraining off-track thoroughbreds, had purchased Storm in 2021 from a rescue organization specializing in retired racehorses, drawn to his potential, despite his troubled history. Storm's brief racing career had been cut short due to a minor tendon injury, after which he passed through multiple owners who struggled with his reactive nature and unpredictable responses to handling. The constant changes in environment and management had exacerbated his anxiety-driven behaviors, creating a pattern of defensive aggression that made him increasingly difficult to handle safely. At Claire's small boarding facility, Storm initially showed promise during light riding sessions, but his ground manners deteriorated significantly over time as stress accumulated. The horse's behavioral issues manifested in various dangerous ways, including crowding Claire during leading sessions, snapping at her hands when being tacked up, and occasionally charging when asked to move in confined spaces. Claire's experience with thoroughbreds was limited to more stable horses, and her expertise in behavioral modification was insufficient to address Storm's complex psychological needs. Initially, she managed these issues by avoiding confrontational situations, which allowed Storm's aggressive behaviors to escalate unchecked. In early 2023, recognizing the growing danger, Claire sought professional help from equine trainer Natalie Rivera, who specialized in retraining racehorses and understood the unique challenges these animals presented. Natalie immediately recommended recording training sessions to identify specific triggers and track progress in addressing Storm's reactivity issues. On August 12, 2023, the incident occurred during a groundwork session aimed at teaching Storm to yield space on a lead rope, taking place in a sandy outdoor arena with a camera positioned to capture the interaction. Storm was already on edge that day due to a nearby construction project, producing loud banging noises that amplified his already sensitive disposition and triggered memories of track environments. The footage captures the rapid escalation of Storm's aggression as Claire, under Natalie's guidance, attempts to apply gentle pressure with the lead rope. Initially compliant, but growing increasingly tense, Storm's ears pin back and his tail swishes rapidly before he suddenly charges forward with head lowered, aiming directly at Claire's torso and pushing her backward while circling to rear and lunge again with bared teeth. Those repeated charges were relentless, but this next case reveals how complex behavioral trauma can create the most brutal attacks. Horse attacks in stable. Complex behavioral trauma reached its breaking point when 14-year-old Appaloosa gelding Maverick launched a severe assault on equestrian instructor Rebecca Lawson during a routine stable check in Colorado. The incident, detailed in security footage that captured the explosive violence, occurred in January 2024, when years of psychological damage from inconsistent handling and multiple relocations finally erupted into uncontrolled aggression. Rebecca, a certified equestrian instructor running a small riding school, had acquired Maverick in 2022 from a sanctuary that specialized specialized in hard-to-place horses with behavioral issues. Maverick's fragmented history revealed a pattern of failed placements stemming from his unpredictable temperament and explosive reactions to stress. Originally a ranch horse, he had been sold multiple times due to dangerous behaviors, including bolting under saddle and violent resistance to handling procedures. Experts later attributed his psychological problems to early trauma, possibly from harsh training methods, compounded by frequent environmental changes that systematically eroded his trust in humans and created deep-seated fear responses. At Rebecca's facility, Maverick displayed confusing mixed signals that made assessment and treatment challenging for even experienced handlers. During quiet periods, he appeared calm and manageable, but stress triggers would transform him into an explosive and dangerous animal. His behavioral episodes included ear pinning, aggressive tail swishing, and escalating nipping behaviors that Rebecca documented in detailed training logs while attempting to develop effective management strategies. A barn fire at a neighboring property in late 2023 had caused smoke inhalation and significantly heightened Maverick's baseline anxiety levels, making him increasingly volatile and unpredictable. Rebecca enlisted behavioral consultant Dr. Ethan Clark to evaluate his condition and develop a comprehensive rehabilitation plan. On January 8, 2024, the incident unfolded during an evening stable check when Rebecca entered Maverick's stall to adjust his blanket, unaware that a loose stable door banging in the wind had already triggered his hypervigilant state. The stable's security camera captured the sudden and intense escalation as Rebecca approached Maverick with calm reassurance. Standing rigidly with wide eyes betraying extreme tension, Maverick appeared to tolerate her presence until she reached for the blanket strap. Without warning, he exploded into violence, lunging forward to bite her shoulder deeply before rearing to strike with his front hooves. The footage shows Rebecca being knocked to the ground, where Maverick continued his assault, trampling over her and delivering a powerful kick to her side while she curled into a fetal position to protect her head from his circling aggressive attacks. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.